After 60, the most dangerous thing you can do with your savings isn't spending too much. It's treating your money the same way you did before. Most people don't realize this until it's too late. They assume that if they were careful in their 40s and 50s, that same approach will carry them safely through their later years. But life after 60 follows a completely different rhythm. Time feels different, energy changes, priorities shift. And yet, the money habits often stay frozen in the past. I've read countless stories from people who reached their 60s feeling confident, even relieved. The mortgage was paid, the kids were grown, the pressure to earn was gone. On paper, everything looked fine. But slowly, quietly, a sense of unease crept in. Not because their savings vanished overnight, but because something felt off. The money that once felt solid now felt fragile. Decisions that used to be simple started to feel heavy. The problem wasn't a lack of discipline. It was the wrong mindset. After 60, savings are no longer about growth, competition, or proving anything. They're about protection, clarity, and peace of mind. And the biggest mistake people make is continuing to treat their savings like a scorecard instead of a support system. Many people stay obsessed with the number, how much is left, how much it could become, how it compares to others. They check balances constantly, ride emotional highs when the market is up, and feel deep anxiety when it dips. This habit, while common, slowly erodes confidence. It turns money into a source of stress instead of security. One man shared how he spent decades carefully building his savings. He was proud of it, and rightly so. But after retirement, he found himself checking his accounts every morning. If the number was down, his whole day felt heavy. If it was up, he felt temporarily relieved. Over time, his mood became tied to fluctuations he couldn't control. He wasn't spending recklessly, he wasn't irresponsible, but he was emotionally draining himself by watching his savings instead of living his life. After 60, savings are not meant to be stared at. They're meant to be structured, understood, and then trusted.
Another common habit that quietly causes harm is holding on to money out of fear rather than intention. People tell themselves they're being cautious, but deep down, they're frozen. They stop enjoying their savings altogether. They delay necessary expenses, ignore quality of life improvements, and deny themselves comfort because they're afraid of what might happen later. One woman wrote about how she avoided replacing her aging appliances even though she could afford it. She avoided traveling to see family. She avoided small joys, not because she lacked money, but because she didn't know how much was safe to use. Her savings existed, but they weren't serving her. They were just sitting there, guarded by constant worry. Savings after 60 are not just about lasting. They're about working for you in the present, not just surviving the future. Another mistake people make is treating all savings as one single pile. Everything is lumped together in their mind. Emergency money, living expenses, long-term care possibilities, fun, family help. It all becomes one blurry number. This lack of clarity creates anxiety because when money has no role, every decision feels risky. People often say, "I don't know if I can afford this," not because they truly can't, but because they haven't given their savings clear jobs. When money has no purpose, it feels unsafe to touch. And when it feels unsafe, people either overspend impulsively or underspend to the point of discomfort. After 60, savings need boundaries. Not restrictions, boundaries. A portion of your savings should exist purely to protect you from emergencies. Another portion should exist to support your daily life. Another portion can be reserved for enjoyment, generosity, or experiences that matter to you. When savings are organized this way, decisions become calmer. You stop guessing. You stop fearing every expense. You start acting with intention instead of hesitation. Many older adults also carry an outdated sense of guilt around spending their own money. They were raised to save, to sacrifice, to put others first. Those habits served them well earlier in life, but after 60, they can quietly turn into self-denial. People feel guilty enjoying what they worked so hard to build. They feel irresponsible for wanting comfort or pleasure. But savings are not a trophy, they're a tool. A man once said something that stayed with me. He said, "I spent my whole life preparing for retirement, and then I forgot to live in it." His savings were healthy, his needs were covered, but mentally he was still in survival mode. It took him years to realize that careful doesn't have to mean joyless. Another dangerous habit is ignoring simplicity. As people age, life benefits from being simpler, not more complex. But many hold on to complicated financial structures they no longer fully understand. Old accounts, outdated investments, forgotten subscriptions, scattered paperwork. This creates confusion and vulnerability. When savings become complicated, stress follows, and stress over time becomes exhaustion. After 60, clarity matters more than optimization. Understanding matters more than squeezing out an extra percentage. People who feel calm about money later in life often share one thing in common. They simplified. They stopped chasing perfection. They focused on stability and ease. They knew where their money was, they knew what it was for, and they trusted the system they built. Perhaps the most painful mistake is postponing adjustment. Many people sense that something isn't working, but they delay making changes. They tell themselves they'll revisit things next year, or when the market improves, or when they feel more confident. But time after 60 moves quickly. Small delays can turn into years of unnecessary stress. Adjusting how you use your savings is not admitting failure. It's adapting to a new chapter. Savings are meant to support your health, your independence, your dignity, and your peace of mind. When they stop doing that, something needs to change. Not later, but now. As people move deeper into their 60s, another pattern begins to show up again and again. It's subtle, and that's why it's dangerous. They stop reviewing their savings decisions regularly, not because they don't care, but because they feel tired of thinking about money. For decades, money required attention, earning it, managing it, planning for the future. By the time people reach their 60s, many feel they've already done the hard work. They believe everything should now just run on its own. So they stop checking, they stop questioning, they stop adjusting. This is when small problems begin to grow quietly. Accounts that once made sense no longer match their needs. Fees creep in unnoticed. Interest rates change. Automatic payments continue for services long forgotten. Insurance policies sit untouched even as life circumstances shift. None of this feels urgent, so it gets ignored. But over time, these small leaks drain confidence and cash. One retiree shared how he discovered he had been paying for multiple overlapping insurance coverages for years, not because he was careless, but because he never revisited decisions made long ago. By the time he noticed, thousands had quietly slipped away. What frustrated him most wasn't the money, it was the realization that his savings weren't being respected the way he respected them. After 60, savings don't need constant worry, but they do need occasional attention. Ignoring them doesn't protect them. Another common habit that harms savings is holding on to investments or accounts out of familiarity rather than suitability. People often say, "I've always done it this way," without stopping to ask whether that way still serves them. What worked during working years may introduce unnecessary risk or complexity later in life. There's comfort in familiarity, but comfort can also blind people. Someone once wrote about how he kept his savings invested aggressively because that's what helped him grow wealth in his 40s and 50s. But now, every market swing made him anxious. He wasn't planning to withdraw everything, but the emotional toll was heavy. He felt trapped between fear of loss and fear of missing out. Savings after 60 should not create daily stress. If they do, something is misaligned. Another issue that appears often is cash sitting idle for the wrong reasons. People tell themselves they're being safe by holding large amounts of money in low-yield accounts, but they don't realize the quiet erosion happening in the background.
Inflation slowly chips away at purchasing power, making money less useful over time. Being cautious doesn't mean being inactive, and safety doesn't mean stagnation. One woman explained how she kept nearly all her savings untouched because she didn't want to make a mistake. Years later, she realized her money hadn't kept pace with rising costs. She wasn't reckless, she was frozen, and that freezing came from fear, not strategy. After 60, the goal isn't maximum growth, it's balance, protection without paralysis. Another damaging habit is reacting emotionally to financial news. People watch headlines, listen to alarming predictions, and make sudden changes driven by fear. They move money abruptly, pull out at the worst times, or jump into things they don't fully understand, all because they feel pressured to act. The problem isn't information, it's noise. Savings should be guided by your personal situation, not daily headlines. Emotional decisions often feel urgent in the moment, but they usually lead to regret. The people who fare best later in life are rarely the ones who react quickly. They're the ones who act thoughtfully and calmly.
There's also a tendency after 60 to avoid conversations about money altogether. People don't want to burden their family. They don't want to admit uncertainty. They don't want to feel exposed. So they keep concerns to themselves, even when questions pile up. Silence can be expensive. One older adult shared how she struggled privately for years, unsure if her savings would last. She didn't want to worry her children. She didn't want to ask for professional help. When she finally did speak up, she discovered her situation was far more stable than she believed. The anxiety she carried had been heavier than the reality. Savings should bring reassurance, not isolation. Another habit that quietly harms people is over-gifting out of guilt. Some feel pressure to help adult children or grandchildren financially, even when it strains their own stability. They want to be generous, they want to feel useful, but generosity without boundaries can quietly undermine security. Helping others should not come at the cost of your own peace of mind. People rarely regret helping loved ones, but many regret not setting limits. After 60, savings should first protect your independence. When that foundation is secure, generosity feels lighter and more joyful. Another mistake is ignoring future healthcare costs because thinking about them feels uncomfortable. People assume they'll figure it out later or that it won't apply to them. But uncertainty doesn't disappear when ignored. It grows. Planning doesn't mean expecting the worst. It means respecting reality. Those who take time to understand potential healthcare expenses, even broadly, often feel calmer. Not because they've predicted everything, but because they've acknowledged what could happen. That acknowledgement reduces fear. There's also the habit of treating savings as untouchable, even for meaningful improvements. People delay making their lives easier because they're afraid to spend. They live with discomfort, outdated tools, or unnecessary inconvenience, all while their savings sit untouched. Savings saved at the expense of well-being comes at a high price. After 60, savings should support comfort, safety, and dignity. They should help you live better, not smaller. Using money intentionally to improve daily life isn't wasteful, it's wise. And finally, one of the most overlooked habits is failing to adapt as life changes. What you needed at 60 may not be what you need at 65 or 70, but many people keep everything exactly the same even as circumstances shift. Saving strategies should evolve. They should breathe with your life. The people who feel most at ease with their savings later in life are not the ones who never made mistakes. They're the ones who stayed flexible. They adjusted. They simplified. They let go of outdated habits. At this stage in life, the most important change is not about numbers. It's about how you relate to your savings. After 60, savings are no longer just a future plan.
They are a living system meant to support you now. That shift alone changes everything. When people stop treating their savings as something fragile that must never be touched and start seeing them as a tool designed to serve their life, a sense of relief often follows. One person explained it perfectly. He said that for years he felt like his savings were watching him, judging every decision. Any expense made him anxious. But once he reframed his thinking and asked, "What is this money actually for?" everything softened. The fear didn't disappear overnight, but it loosened its grip. Savings after 60 should work quietly in the background, not sit heavily on your chest. The healthiest habit you can build is intentional use. That means knowing why your money is where it is, what it's meant to do, and when it's okay to let it help you. Not recklessly, not impulsively, but deliberately. Another key change is simplifying. Complexity feels productive, but later in life it often creates confusion and stress. Multiple accounts, scattered paperwork, overlapping plans, all of it demands mental energy. People who simplify their savings often describe feeling lighter, clearer, and more confident. One woman shared how she consolidated accounts she barely remembered opening. Once everything was in one place, she finally understood her own situation. Nothing magical changed in the numbers, but her relationship with her money changed completely. Clarity brings calm. There's also great power in building a gentle routine around finances. Not constant checking, just regular calm reviews, once or twice a year, enough to stay informed without becoming consumed. This small habit prevents surprises and restores a sense of control. People who do this don't feel caught off guard. They feel prepared. Another shift is allowing yourself to ask questions. You don't need to become an expert. You just need to stay curious. Whether that means talking to a trusted advisor, a knowledgeable family member, or simply educating yourself at your own pace, asking questions is not a weakness, it's wisdom. The most financially peaceful people after 60 are not those who know everything. They are the ones who aren't afraid to say, "Help me understand this." It's also important to give yourself permission to enjoy what you've built. Many people spend decades saving, sacrificing, and delaying, only to struggle with spending even when it's reasonable. They forget that rest, comfort, and small joys are valid uses of money. Savings are not a test you pass by never touching them. They are a resource meant to support a life well lived. This doesn't mean spending without thought. It means choosing well. Spending on things that improve safety, health, connection, and peace of mind. Saying no to waste, but yes to value.
There is also wisdom in planning gently for the unknown. Not obsessing over worst-case scenarios, but acknowledging that life continues to change. Having buffers, having flexibility, having a plan that can bend without breaking. People who feel secure later in life aren't those who predicted everything perfectly. They're the ones who prepared without panic. And perhaps the most important realization of all is this: you are allowed to change your approach. What made sense years ago doesn't have to define today. Letting go of outdated habits is not failure, it's growth. Adapting your savings strategy is not a sign of fear, it's a sign of awareness. After 60, the goal shifts from accumulation to stability, from growth to sustainability, from fear to confidence. When savings are treated with respect instead of anxiety, they become a quiet source of strength. They stop controlling your decisions and start supporting them. They stop being something you worry about and start being something you trust. And that trust matters, because this chapter of life isn't about proving anything. It's about living with intention, dignity, and calm. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on your own habits, not with judgment, but with honesty. Small changes made with clarity can make a powerful difference over time. Thank you for being here, for taking the time to listen, and for investing in your future peace of mind.